I'm gonna be recommending 5 modern fantasy books that you absolutely need to read. This isn't a top 10, I'm not gonna be ranking them in any way. A lot of these are just books that I read recently that I wanna recommend to someone because they're incredible, and you should read them too. I'm gonna give you a spoiler-free description of each book, and then I'll break down what's special about them and why I enjoyed them. From amazing character arcs, some fantastic plotting, and intricate world building, we're gonna explore what sets these books apart in the very crowded genre of fantasy. And as always, feel free to leave your recommendations in the comments. But before getting into it, this video is sponsored by IntoTheAM, and let me just say right off the bat, IntoTheAM has been my favorite clothing brand for years now. You often see me wearing their clothes in my videos. IntoTheAM is a premium clothing brand created in 2012 that delivers fresh styles with curated original designs. They have a whole team of artists and creators they work with. And their clothing never fails to impress when it comes to the overall comfort and fit. Now, they sent me some of their new products, and these joggers I love. They are so comfortable. And their graphic tees always have the coolest designs. I'm actually going to California soon, and I wanted some beachy clothing, and the designs they sent me are so perfect. They're super comfortable, they use quality soft fabric, plus they use eco-friendly inks. Now, your 100% satisfaction is their priority, so they have a 30-day money-back guarantee, they have hassle-free returns, and lightning fast shipping. And not to mention outstanding customer service. So if you want to stay inspired and elevate your self-expression while achieving unparalleled levels of comfort, then make sure to use the link in the description or go to intotheam.com/capturedinwords or use the coupon code capturedinwords to get 10% off your entire order. Huge thank you to IntoTheAM for sponsoring the video. Okay, moving on. The first book I want to talk about is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is the first book I have read by Islington. I've had his first 2 Lycanius trilogy books on my shelf for years now, and I just haven't gotten around to it. I don't know why. After reading this, I definitely want to get to it. This is an absolute must-read. This is probably the best book I have read this year so far, and yes, I'm gonna tell you why, but I want to give you a brief synopsis. The Katenin Republic, the hierarchy, may rule the world now, but they do not know everything. I tell them my name is Viz Telemus. I tell them I was orphaned after a tragic accident 3 years ago, and that good fortune alone has led to my acceptance into their most prestigious school. I tell them that once I graduate, I will gladly join the rest of civilized society in allowing my strength, my drive, and my focus, what they call will, to be leached away and added to the power of those above me, as millions already do, as all must eventually do. I tell them that I belong, and they believe me. But the truth is that I've been sent to the academy to find answers, to solve a murder, to search for an ancient weapon, to uncover secrets that may tear the Republic apart, and that I will never, ever cede my will to the empire that executed my family. To survive, though, I will still have to rise through the Academy's ranks. I will have to smile and make friends, and pretend to be one of them, and win. Because if I cannot, then those who want to control me, who know my real name, will no longer have any use for me. And if the hierarchy finds out who I truly am, they will kill me. Now, I am a big fan of magical school settings in my fantasy, and this is one of the best school settings I have read since the Kingkiller Chronicle. This is a school made up of the wealthy and powerful within this hierarchy, and Viz is entering the school late, and he undergoes a rigorous physical and mental training regime in order to prepare him, and he definitely doesn't really belong here at the school, which is more pressure for him to prove himself. Now, basically, years before this book begins, there was this cataclysm, and the hierarchy amasses this power and basically takes over everything, conquering kingdoms and placing everyone under their rule and their magic system, making people cede their willpower to those above them. Pretty much everyone in this world has to cede their will to someone else, and Viz has managed to avoid this for many reasons. And basically, the more people you have ceding you their will, the more powerful you are, and there's different levels to the power system here. Each level using Latin numbers as their names. For instance, a sextus is level 6, for example, a quintus level 5, and basically the whole structure of power forms this pyramid in the ruling hierarchy. One of the best parts about the relationships in this book is that you can't trust anybody. If there's somebody trying to help Viz, they often have something that they want in return. Then when he does gain a friend, it feels very well earned because they've gone through a lot together. There is a lot happening in this story right from the beginning, with Viz being an orphan, his adoption, his training, going to this school setting. There is so much going on in the first part of the book that it's kind of a lot to take in at once. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I think we're used to that in a lot of fantasy, but I'm just making you aware what you're getting into in the first part of the book. But there is so much to enjoy in this story, and honestly, Islington is a master at like twists and turns in the plot. There were so many times I was surprised by what just happened, and it completely went a different way I wasn't expecting. It's actually very hard for me to critique this book because everything just works so well. The world building is brilliant. The character development is brilliant. The plotting, the pacing, all that is brilliant. Honestly, you need to read this. It's a top recommendation from me. Don't be overwhelmed by the beginning. Just keep pushing through because it is just such an amazing story. Also, a huge thank you to one of my top patrons, Mike Baker, who sent me this book as well as the next one that I'm going to talk about. The next one being The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. Now, the novel alternates perspectives between two protagonists. Levira Page is an inquisitive yet stubborn girl who lives in a settlement within the dust. And here, outside of the city walls, is a very harsh and dangerous environment where food and water is scarce, and dust storms ravage the land. Dust bears are a threat, along with the danger of sabbers, a race of brutal, wolf-like warriors that despise humans. Now, Levira is a really great protagonist. I love how driven she is and how she refuses to give up. The other lead is a young man named Evar Eventeri, and he spent his entire life trapped within an enormous library that's bigger than cities and older than empires. Together with his 4 adopted siblings and endless towers of books, they were raised by one of the library's assistants, this porcelain-looking android type figure. Now, this is called the Athenium, and it's an infinitely large labyrinth of knowledge that houses the collective memory of humankind. And Lawrence really has a lot to say here about humanity's thirst for self-destruction, as well as themes of memory and xenophobia. This was truly a standout book, and I'm gonna be thinking about it for a long time. So here I was thinking that Lawrence only wrote grimdark. I've read his Broken Empire series, and I enjoyed it quite a bit, but I was also very mixed on it. I mean, the protagonist is someone you're not gonna enjoy. Like, he's a terrible person. So I was kind of expecting some grimdark here. This is not grimdark at all, and honestly, it's refreshing to see that Lawrence does have such a range in his writing. His writing style here is just so beautiful and evocative. I really enjoyed just the prose and everything. And also, I love the setting of this library. I mean, obviously, as reader, I enjoy library setting, but it was done really well here. It wasn't just thrown in for the sake of it. And also, the 2 protagonists I enjoyed a lot as well. How we alternated between their perspectives, I thought just worked really well in this story. And I'm really excited to read the next book in the What am I saying? In The Book That Wouldn't Burn. What is it called? The library series, I think? Am I right about that? I don't know. It doesn't say the name of the series, but the sequel is coming out, I believe in April, so I'm very excited about that. And also, the mystery was done so well. I feel like this book isn't going to be for everyone, but I really enjoyed it, and I hope that you give it a chance. Next, we have The Ninth Reign by Jen Williams. Now, if you enjoy your fantasy to have unique world building, then you need to read this. That's something I really appreciate in fantasy. Like, as much as I love a realistic fantasy setting, I also enjoy when authors try to go outside the boundaries of like classical fantasy or even just more realistic stuff like A Song of Ice and Fire. I like when authors do really weird stuff and use their imagination to the highest degree. That's one reason why I really love the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. And here we have some incredible world building and mystery that I really love. I love when fantasy books have a lot of mystery to them. Now, the characters here I also really enjoyed. I will say there's a few characters in here that I just didn't feel like were that well-rounded, but they do gain more depth to them in the sequel book. One character I really loved in this first book was Lady Vincenza Vintage. Vintage is this eccentric explorer that kind of reminds me of Indiana Jones, like a female version, and I just feel like she added a lot to this book. She was one of the point of views I enjoyed reading from the most. Now, this book opens with a dying empire. The once great city of Abora finds itself on the cusp of extinction. This long-lived elven-like race has seemingly been abandoned by their tree god, and this has led them to start dying in droves. Now, I should probably note that these Aborans are not really liked by the outside world, because they're known for killing people and using their blood to keep themselves alive. Understandably, there's a lot of fear around them and racial tension because of that history. And we follow one of these Aborans, named Tormalin the Oathless, who's one of the last of his kind. He decides to leave the husk of Abora and find life outside of its walls, and he ends up enlisting as a bodyguard to Lady Vincenza. She's a scholar and archaeologist trying to discover more about these mysterious ancient artifacts that were left across the continent after the last cataclysmic war between Abora and this alien species that has repeatedly invaded the planet. Now, there is a lot going on here. I really enjoyed some of the unique aspects to this world, like these giant bats that are used as mounts, and these parasite spirits that came from the aliens. I truly wish this book was talked about more because it is so refreshing. It is such a unique blend of sci-fi and fantasy. At times, I do feel like the lighthearted tone and the writing style doesn't quite do enough justice to the world that was created here, but overall, it is still a story I really enjoyed and I highly recommend. Also, if you are a fan of like ancient civilizations and tomb raiding and stuff like that, then you'll like this book. That is a trope I really love. I love ancient artifacts and ancient ruins and civilizations and stuff like that, and we get some of that here, so highly recommend. The pacing in the Ninth Reign is also really well done. It's not like the fastest paced book out there, but it's just balanced really well between the slower moments and the quicker moments and the emotional parts and all of that. I just feel like it's a great balance. One of the most intense and emotional books I have ever read is The Sword of Kaigen by M.L. Wong. This book is such an emotional journey. It is heartbreaking, it is beautiful, it is harrowing, and I think it's a really great standalone fantasy, and I really enjoy seeing more standalone fantasy. I think there's a lot of value to a one-off story where you don't have to invest in a huge, long, drawn-out story. This book packs a punch, and it does so in the perfect amount of pages. Like, I don't feel like there's much I would cut from this book. It is honestly one of the best standalones I have read. Now, it does take place in the Theonite War universe. There's multiple books in the Theonite War, but this is a standalone. You don't have to read any of the others. But man, this book made me feel things. It strikes right at the heart. There's love, there's loss. It is just a really emotional book, but I feel like if you are a fan of like martial arts, if you're a fan of Avatar: The Last Airbender, the magic system kind of reminds me of that. There's sort of a bending system here using elements that I think was really well done. But it is a much darker story, obviously. On a mountainside, at the edge of the Kaiganese Empire, live the most powerful fighters in the world. Warriors capable of raising the sea and wielding blades of ice. For centuries, the fighters of the Kusanagi Peninsula have held the Empire's enemies at bay, earning their treacherous spit of land the name the Sword of Kaigen. Born into Kusanagi's legendary Matsuda family, 14-year-old Mamoru has always known his purpose: to master his family's fighting technique and defend his homeland. But when an outsider arrives and pulls back the curtain on Kaigen's alleged age of peace, Mamoru realizes that he might not have much time before he has to become the fighter he was bred to be. I honestly can't recommend this book enough. If you're in the middle of a series right now, if you're finishing up a series, you should take a break, read this book, and just enjoy the entire experience, because I would love to read this book again for the first time. And the final book I need to talk about is The Black Tongue Thief by Christopher Buehlman. This is book 1 in the Black Tongue trilogy. It is the first book I have read by Buehlman, and I really enjoyed it. I really want to read more by this author now, so if you have any recommendations, let me know in the comments. The story revolves around Kinch Na Shanek, a man who owes the Takers Guild a small fortune for his education as a thief. And it's the pressure of this debt that drives him to rob the next traveler he sees, but he messes with the wrong person. Galva is not only a survivor of the brutal Goblin Wars and a knight, but also the handmaiden to the Goddess of Death. Now, unsuccessful with his attempt, Kinch escapes, but his whole life is now entangled with Galva, and this draws him into greater events that are much more dangerous than he's ever experienced before, and he's not exactly prepared for it. The setting here is very well detailed. It offers this kind of realistic, gritty look at a world that's recovering from war, and this is a world with a lot of magic to it. People can access magic through various magical items, as well as these magical tattoos. Yes, magic tattoos, but it's definitely like a soft magic system, and I loved having that mystery to it all. At the same time, Buehlman doesn't abuse that mystery by making magic just save the day all the time. He's a talented author, and he doesn't abuse that. There's also a lot of monsters in this world, like krakens and giant ravens, giants and goblins, but these are not your typical goblins. Usually when you think of a goblin, you think of just a mob minion that you kill on your way to like the real danger. These goblins are not like that. These are terrifying man-eating creatures that are poisonous. They have sharp teeth and they're hungry. Honestly, one of the most terrifying depictions of goblins that I've seen. Now, this is written in first person. It's Kinch telling the story from a later date, and I really enjoyed just the point of view of Kinch. He is such like a sarcastic and sharp character to follow. He has this really great sense of humor, but he also knows when to be serious as well. And while this book does have a lot of funny moments to it, it's definitely not comedic fantasy by any means. This is kind of grimdark fantasy with like snarky humor to it. I feel like there needs to be a full subgenre for that. Like, you know, the First Law type of grimdark, or the Gentleman Bastards type of grimdark. In fact, this book reminds me a lot of The Lies of Locke Lamora, also The Kings of the Wild by Nicholas Eames. This book has that same kind of humor to it, and a really great balance of humor, and then these action-packed moments that are super tense, and that balance just works so well. A major highlight to The Black Tongue Thief, in my opinion, is that this is a very accessible book. The prose itself is just very smooth, it's easy to glide through, and it's very fast-paced as well. I feel like this is a great, quick book that you can read in between some other ones, but it still packs a punch. There's a lot of emotional moments here, and the character, again, of Kinch is just a character I really enjoyed reading. And again, this makes me excited to read more by Christopher Buehlman. I was actually sent an early copy of the second book, The Daughter's War by Tor. This is releasing in June 2024, so I definitely want to read this one very soon. Also, I gotta say, the cover on this, both of the covers, look so good together. I really like the cover design. And this sequel promises goblins, betrayal, and revenge, so I'm very excited to get to it. Now, those are the 5 books I am going to mention today. Obviously, I am very limited with just mentioning 5. I mean, maybe I'll make like a top 20 modern fantasy books or something like that at some point, but today I just wanted to mention these ones. Let me know all of your recommendations in the comments. Also, tomorrow, for fans of the Cosmere, I'm dropping a sneak peek at this big series I'm working on for the channel called Cosmere Classified, and I hope you're gonna be as excited as I am for it, because I have been putting so much work into this, and I'm just really excited to share it with you. Also, you may have noticed the play button arrived, and I wanted to say a huge thank you to everyone who enjoys my content and comments and all that. You guys are the best. I'm honestly very grateful for the community that I have here, and I just wanted to say thank you.